welcome to Marley Knockers, the podcast.
With us today, we have Bev McChesney. If you are from Kentucky, you have probably seen her at Central Kentucky Mystical Market, Akashic Awareness, or a Mama Ruby event. She is also an owner of the amazing Kentucky Proud company, Blue Leaf Naturals, a CBD distributor.
Thank you for joining us today, Bev. We're excited for our listeners to learn more about you.
It's my pleasure, and I have plenty of stories.
We are very excited. Noelle, can you start us off?
So you identify as a claircognizant, clairaudient, and a psychic medium. Can you tell our listeners what that means?
Well, claircognizant means that you know things and you don't know how you know them. They come into your head. Clairaudient is when you hear things. You hear voices, and yes, I hear voices and I see dead people and all those good things. And then, of course, medium speaks to people who've transitioned. I think what I most do is I speak to people who are on the other side that haven't been humans, things like angels, guardians, guides. I speak to a master council. We have all these entities out in the universe that are here for us, and I speak to them to get the information for my clients.
When did you first realize you had a gift?
My whole life I knew that I knew things, but I thought everybody knew these things. And in my teenage years, it was like I could see the bigger picture in things. I could see what was going on both sides of an issue, or I could see what was going to be the outcome of an issue, and I thought that I was just really good at seeing the bigger picture. But in reality, I was getting this information. It just took a long time for me to learn how to discern the information as being information as opposed to my own thoughts.
So it sounds like you've had this gift for a while. Are you able to turn it off so you have time to yourself?
I've known many, many psychics who couldn't turn it off, and it just about drove some of them insane. So whenever the universe and I made this agreement that I would start publicly reading, we had to make the deal that I could turn it on or off, and I wouldn't carry everyone's stories around in my head. So at the end of a reading, I'll say something like, I hope it was helpful to you, and that's my key, to just let go of the whole reading as well as the person I was reading. I can read someone a month later and not remember that I read them before. I won't remember their stories, may not remember their faces. So I can turn it on or off.
Yeah, I'd say you'd have to do that because it would just be way too much to deal with.
Oh, it would be just overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a lot. Are there preparations you take to talk to those on the other side?
I do. Before I start a series of readings, I'll sit for a moment and kind of make my connections out in the universe. It's like when I'm speaking to people, I go out in the universe and go to certain doors, for lack of a better word, to get their information. And so I'll take time and meditate and go out, is what I call it. And also, before I read, I do work in the shower. I do cleansing work, grounding work. I get myself protected before I open myself to all these different entities.
Okay. How do you protect yourself?
Just by ground. Well, I don't really need protection. Those that I'm speaking to are not going to do anything to me. But sometimes the energy of the clients, they may have something that I don't necessarily want to get attached to. So I'll just do grounding, which I do that by visualizing energy coming through the top of my head, out my feet into the ground, and it just kind of cleans the whole body aura inside and out. And a good shower.
Yeah, and a good shower.
So what do you recommend for people who are trying to tap into their own abilities?
Meditate. Meditate, meditate, meditate. When we quiet our mind, we allow space for these other things to come in and be heard. Meditation is just a good way to center. It's a good way to align yourself with your universal self, and it's a good way to gather information. So I would start there. And then if you want to read tarot, you start working with cards. You pick your thing and start working with it. But the most important key is to meditate and learn how to center yourself in order to receive the information.
And I've also heard that, you need to raise your vibrations in order to do these type of things. What can someone do to do that?
You're absolutely right. I do. That's what when I go out in the universe, the work I do in the shower, that's actually what I'm doing is raising my energetic vibration so that I can tap with that higher vibration of the universe. There's a lot of ways to raise your vibration. One of the best ways is to laugh. find something to laugh about. It will just make your energy vibrate. Enjoy. Do nice things for people. Sing a song. Think about things that make you happy. Drink a lot of water. That's important. There's a lot of ways to raise your energetic patterns and vibration. Most of them involve joy, and they involve doing things from the heart chakra for other people.
You have investigated haunted places. What's been your favorite spot so far?
Well, that's an interesting one because there are lots of spots like that. I want to take a second and explain something to people. A ghost is someone who has not transitioned after death. A spirit is someone who has transitioned after death. I talk to spirits more than I talk to ghosts, but I can talk to ghosts. My favorite ghost story, I used to work on a horse farm in Paris, and all kinds of things happened there. You could hear phantom horses on the track. We couldn't keep a night watchman because they were always seeing somebody bringing a horse in. But one particular night, it was late and dark, and I'd stayed late by myself, and this place had one of those long driveways and electric gates like you see in the movies of the old southern plantations and things. So you would have to stop some distance away from the gate to catch the gate eye so that it would open, and you'd have plenty of room to go through before it closed. And so I was sitting at the gate waiting for it to open, and I thought there were the two big stone posts on each side of the gate. And on the right one, I thought, there's a child up there. But I'm seeing him. I rubbed my eyes, turned my lights on bright. I thought, there's a child up there. But the child was white and wispy, and you could see through it. So I knew what I was seeing was not a human child, but a ghost child. Then I realized, no, it's not a child, it's a jockey. So it was a ghost of a jockey, just a small guy. So I sat there and looked at it, and I thought, okay, do I back up, go back to the office? Do I drive through really fast? Is he going to get in my car? What's going to happen here? So unwisely, I didn't think to grab my phone because I was too overwhelmed by what I was seeing. But all of a sudden, he turned and looked at me, and it froze my blood. And then he glided over to this tree to the right that was between the post and my car. So he came a half a distance closer and went behind a tree. And I thought, okay, if he slides over here to my car, I'm going to mess my pants. I mean, it's that simple. I do not want this ghost in my car. And about that time, he slid out from behind the tree, but then he just disappeared. And I was very grateful, and I drove very quickly through the gates. So that's the first time I saw a full body entity that I could easily identify details and things on. But that place had ghosts. I mean, I could tell you ghost stories all day long from that place.
And they were ghosts and not spirits?
This was a ghost. He had not transitioned.
Wow.
So he
and they do that when they're really attached to someplace?
Some don't transition because they're afraid of going to hell. Mm. They're afraid to transition. There is no hell, by the way, but that's a subject for another day. But some don't transition because they're so attached to something. Some don't transition just because they don't even realize they're dead. There's so many reasons that entities don't transition. It's really sad in a way, but I will tell you, I talk to a lot of angels and guardians and lots of other things, and they tell me that nobody's ever left behind forever. That at some point, they will transition.
Whether they want to or not.
Well, they come to a point, I think, where they realize whatever reason they're not transitioning for, the entities over there just will work with them until they'll bring them over. So at some point they will. Now, for the ghost here, it may be 500 years. Mm. But on that side, that's like an hour. You know, the time is so different. Right. So they may be here forever, but they don't feel like they've been there 500 years. They just feel like they've been there a while. It's that whole time. It's that whole time-space thing.
Interesting.
So, is there any ghosts or spirits that you've encountered that you feel like that have been here for a really long time and you just don't know why? Or do you think it's like what's the difference between someone that's stuck here and kind of like a residual type haunting?
Residual type, everything is energy. Every single thing. The table I'm leaning on, the microphone, everything's energy. And when someone does something every day routinely, they leave an energetic pattern. And that could be walking back and forth to the kitchen every day. In my case where I live, there was a farm, and the farmer apparently would walk every day out to the barn and back to the house. And so we used to see him in our upstairs hallway. And it was just residual energy. He wasn't there, but his energetic pattern was. There are a lot of those that people think are ghosts, but they're residual energies. They don't see us, they don't acknowledge us, they don't know we're there. And it's just their energy pattern. They're on the other side. Or maybe they are ghosts, but they're not that space. And then there are some who've been here for centuries. I've talked to some that have been here a long, long time, but they don't feel like it's been a long, long time. It's it's just hard to understand.
Wibbly wobbly.
It is a
Dr. Who
wibbly.
says
Doctor
this.
Who's right, the wibbly wobbly.
We are going to take a quick break, so we will be right back after this. Thanks for listening.
Talking about what we were talking about before, when you pass, do you still have the ability to work on your spiritual energy? Can you still evolve, so to speak?
That is a really good question, and one I don't have a really clear answer for. Most of the ghosts that I've spoken to, some of them are trying to resolve issues that they feel like need to be resolved. So in that respect, I guess they are working on bettering themselves. They're working on getting things fixed here so that they can be more comfortable moving on. It's probably more like they're trying to fix something than they're actually evolving. But yeah, in that respect, it would be.
So they remain a ghost until those things are resolved, and then they go to spirit form?
They'll be a ghost until they transition.
Speaking of transitions, we've investigated many places that have given us the stipulation to not transition spirits that we may come in contact. What do you think about that? Do you think that is not a great idea? Like, I felt like when we were told that it was kind of not a good policy to have. Because if you can help a spirit transition, why wouldn't you?
I think that is terrible. I think that if someone wants to transition and someone else is trying to prevent it, they're collecting some karma that they're not really going to want. When you try to help someone transition, if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. You can put the help out there. You can give them the tools, but they'll determine if they want to use them or not. There's nobody on this earth that can make anybody transition who doesn't want to. So I think it's very reasonable to put the tools out there to see if they ask for help, or to just give them, to simply say, if you want to leave here, all you have to do is look up. So many ghosts look straight ahead or look down. They don't look up. They're afraid to look up. If someone wants to transition quickly, all they have to do is look up and make that eye connection with the light they'll see. And they'll zip out immediately. But if they aren't ready to transition, if they don't want to, you can't make them. But to intentionally tell someone not to help someone,
Right.
I think that's terrible, and I don't know whose policy that is, but they're collecting some karma they are not going to want to deal with.
I agree with that.
I had an experience on an investigation once I'd like to ask you about, where I was doing a spirit box session, and we were doing the Estes method with the headphones and the blindfold, and I felt like I was talking to an enslaved woman named Rachel, and I have never felt that way in my entire life during an investigation. I was so sad and so shaken and so moved by her, and it's not happened since, but that experience, how do they make you feel what they were feeling?
Well, you are intuitive and you're empathic, so whenever you made that connection to her, you would sense some of that anyway. But this is bigger. This is much bigger. You have been a slave in a past life. And so when you felt her sorrow, when you felt her fear, it brought those memories back to you and overwhelmed you. So it was your own memories of being a slave that were overwhelming you. She just was the tool that precipitated those feelings, because you being empathic and intuitive, you felt her sorrow and her fear. And your own memories came flooding back.
Okay, on that same note, I seem to encounter a lot of angry spirits, ghosts on investigations. And I was just wondering why that is. Why do I seem to attract that?
So you'll get the ones that lash out or say ugly things,
Yes,
or
I get called names. Yes, I've been cursed out a lot.
you have a very strong energy. You have an authoritative energy. So they see your light, they see your energy, and they're like, I'm not going to deal with her. Screw her, you know. And so they come after you. They're seeing your energetic patterns. They don't see us as human beings. They see us as energetic patterns. We still look like people to them, but we also look like energy. And so people's auras, you have an authoritative aura. So they figure, I'm not putting up with her.
No. Okay, makes
Well,
sense.
that kind of makes sense why, Kim gets all of the children and,
Yeah, why is that? I just
Probably-
feel,
yeah.
I don't know, I just feel like a mother so much. And I guess that's
They feel
why.
it too.
Yeah, because I do. I get kids at Ross especially. There's always kids.
Which is very weird. So when we're investigating places, some places seem like it is not a place where children should be or certain types of people should be. Does it matter what type of building is there, or is it just spirits kind of latch onto the land, or just the energy in the place, or why do they end up where they are?
In some instances, they're there because of what the space is. They were there before. Many times they were there at the building before that space, or the building before that space, or the building before that one. But even more interesting is if you think about the fact that the future, the past, and the present are all happening at the same time, and each of those have layers of time and structure. They could be slipping in from any other time. They could be slipping in from centuries ahead. You could be picking up people from the future instead of the past.
That just blows my mind.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that adds
That's
a
kinda hard to
dimension. Yeah.
comprehend.
Yeah, because if we're doing an investigation thinking we're talking to someone from,
The past.
1970 or whenever, and we could be talking to them from 2070, and we don't know.
Most times you're getting people from the past,
Right.
just because of the energy of the place. But
Right.
conceivably you could get someone from the future.
That just doesn't even seem possible, and it's just amazing to think that it is possible.
I just remember this. When we did our investigation at Octagon Hall, and I had just sat down at the table, and within 3 minutes, and this has never happened to me before in any other investigation, I had to get up and go outside. I don't know why.
Overwhelming energy. Was that in the kitchen?
It was in that dining room, which,
Right off the kitchen, because
was
the
right
kitchen
off the
was where the
kitchen, yeah.
computer was.
yeah.
Well, it was a child energy. It was a strong emotional child energy. So whatever it was a child. It was a child in pain. It was a strong emotional child energy, and it just overwhelmed you.
Okay. It was the little girl.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, you don't know this story, but or you may not know this story. Octagon Hall, there was a girl that was killed because her dress caught on fire.
Okay.
She was probably, what did they say, 8, 9 years old?
Yeah.
There was another child that died in the house, but he was not even, I don't think, 2 years old.
That's
But
not who I felt.
we felt the female child there a lot.
What I'm feeling that you felt was a child running in pain. So that would make sense.
The one that
That would make sense.
caught her dress on fire. Yes, because she didn't pass away for several days after that happened.
Right.
So,
And I started coughing, and I just had to get up and go outside. And that has never, and I even said, this has never happened to me.
It's the smoke and the smell that you were subconsciously picking up that was making you cough.
Really?
Yeah, the trauma of the whole event. I do feel like the entities I speak to, pulled her out of her body, her soul out of her body, so that she didn't suffer those last day or two. I feel like they already pulled her out, and it just took that long for the physical body to die.
To understand
Yeah.
that it was
Okay.
okay
Yeah.
to go.
that is an amazing place to visit, though. Like,
We need to go. down there
Yes.
sometime
Yeah,
where you
we're
can go
game.
with us.
We're game
Yes.
anytime.
Next time we go, for sure, because I think there's just so much there. That
can
land
feel it.
has seen so much pain and just history in general.
The outside seems really heavy.
When
Yes,
I look
you
at
have
a picture of it,
experience.
it seems heavy on the right side of the front door. It seems really, like I feel like there's a lot of people buried there or something.
That's exactly where we kept getting that light.
Yes, the weekend on it,
Outside.
yes.
Yeah, there's something.
Yes.
But we couldn't investigate because it was pouring down rain and
It was like a monsoon.
It was
So you
night.
couldn't play that night.
Yeah.
No, we
No.
had went, and it was right after the tornadoes.
Right, I
The
remember.
day after.
Yeah, and so it rained all day and all night. But Amy and Kim were looking off the porch and kept seeing a light anomaly in the back field. And Bear, the guy that was like the curator or whatever the title, caretaker, told us, that all of these soldiers came through there, and they were as far as you could see in the field, just laying there waiting to go to Nashville when they were getting driven out by the Union soldiers. So, I mean, there's no telling. There was at least one we know of that had died in the house. So,
It feels
I mean,
like there's a lot buried there on that right
Okay, on the right side.
side.
Yeah, that's
And it
where
could be
we
from even an
felt-
earlier time. I don't even know.
Well, they use that house as a field hospital. So, I mean,
Okay, that explains it. There's organs buried there and everything else. There would be amputations buried in that field. There'd be all kinds of things buried there.
Yeah.
So that's how they get rid of that.
So yeah, we definitely need to go back and investigate some grounds, I think.
And some people definitely stay attached to their body parts that are not.
I would say so.
where
I'm
they
pretty
want
fond of
them to
my
be.
body parts, so I would think
It's
so.
like, that's my leg. I want him.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be very traumatic.
for sure.
So, out of all the tools that we use, are they, legitimate in like accuracy, like dowsing rods and EVPs and things like that?
Dowsing rods are one of the most accurate tools you can use. And the most basic, the cheapest, most basic ghost hunting tool is a dowsing rod, and they work very, very well. I have good luck with flashlights. That's my tool of choice. EMF meters, they, meaning the people I speak to, have told me that they're too fragile, that they can give too many false readings, just simply because of electronics and electronic patterns that are in there's static energy everywhere, not just in wires. So they tell me that those are not as accurate. They've told me that some of the ovalist type tools, that some of those people take random words and create stories around them. It makes it too easy to create a story or think you heard something. But then there's other tools like that are so clear and concise that you can't deny what the words were. So they say those are accurate. I was trying to think of some other tools, but for the most part they are. But some of the basic tools are the best. A ball to roll on the ground, dowsing rods, a flashlight. It's like you don't have to go spend a ton of money to do ghost investigations. You can just do something inexpensive and fun.
Right. We had talked about in our first episode, when we first started doing this, we had a camera and a recorder, and that was it. I mean, we've acquired other things since then, but, the basics are all you really need.
Well, my husband loves gadgets, so we have lots of gadgets to play with, but
What do you think about spirit boxes?
some are good and some aren't.
Yeah.
It's just pretty much which ones you get or which ones you don't. It's if the messages come through clearly, they're going to come through, and it has nothing to do with the box. It has everything to do with the entity.
As a follow-up to the dowsing rods question, is that something that can be manipulated by spirits or ghosts, or is that something that your intuition is driving, or is it kind of both?
Dowsing rods are an interesting tool. When you're dowsing questions for yourself, you're actually getting messages from your higher self, what I call your oversoul. So you're getting messages for yourself from yourself in another place and time. But when you're using them in like a ghost investigation, entity is generally pushing the rod, or their energetic patterns making the rod cross. It's like when you use a rod for water dowsing, that rod is looking for water. It's not listening to what you think. A rod, basically with the dowsing rods, you convey to them what you're looking for and they'll go look for it. But if you're getting answers for yourself personally, like asking yourself yes and no questions, then you're talking to your higher self. But the rods have their own energetic patterns.
Right. I have a set of dowsing rods and, use it for different questions and try to locate things. And it always has found, I believe most of the time, what I was looking for. So I didn't know if that was me remembering putting it there or actually it helping me find it.
I used those a lot on the farm I worked on, and the farm owners would come get them and use them to find water lines. It's a 2,500 acre farm, so there was a lot of water lines to look for. And they worked every time, and they'd keep my rods, and Jim would have to make more.
Here, actually, Jim made mine. The set that I have.
Mine too,
They're good rods.
And my father was a water witch. He just took a forked.
You can do that. You can
branch.
You can use coat hangers.
Yeah.
It's the intent. You just give them the intent of what they're looking for, and they'll go find it. It's
My
crazy.
grandfather did that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. My grandfather was supposedly a healer. Don't know. Have you ever heard the comment about the seventh son of the seventh son and being born with a veil over their face? Have you heard that? Is that true? And what exactly does that mean?
Some babies are born with some placenta or tissue over their face, and that's called a veil. A lot of babies are born with the whitish film over their face. That was an old, I never knew where it came from, how far back, but the seventh son of the seventh son, I think it was just a wives' tale. But if everybody raised that seventh son in thinking that they had abilities, then they could very well manifest those abilities. So you can create those wives' tales and make them real.
Right. The more you hear them and play them over and over in your memory, it becomes
you.
You.
What was he said to have done?
I don't know. I think it was my mother actually that had warts on her hands. And he supposedly laid his hands on her and told her what she needed to do. Something about burying a potato or something. I have no idea. And he said in 3 days it'll be gone. And it was.
When I was a kid, I had warts, and my grandmother said, I'm going to rub a potato on them, wrap your hands in a dish towel, scrub your hands with the dish towel, bury the dish towel, and your warts will be gone in 3 days, and they were. And I'd had them for months. Is it power of suggestion?
Why always a potato? Maybe they were readily available. Like, that's just very weird because you both grew up in very different places. So
They both were potatoes.
Well, then you wonder, do enzymes in the potato help get rid of warts?
Oh, sure.
Are there enzymes in that vegetable that work?
True. And I remember seeing someone do that. It wasn't my grandfather, but when you took the potato off, wherever it hit that wart, it was like really dark colored. Interesting.
So, was it the potato or was it magic?
Magic?
So I know you had mentioned karma a few times, and I had heard, or I have done a few readings on different excerpts from various religions about karma and like the reality of it or whatever, questioning the validity of karma. My question is karmic debt real? And if it is, are we born holding karmic debt to be owed? And if so, what does that entail?
Okay. Karma is very real. What you put out into the world, you will get back, and you will get it back. The old rule of three, one finger pointing, you point a finger at somebody, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. That's true. Because when you point that finger, you're emitting an energetic pattern. You're emitting an intent, and it's going to come right back to you. So karma is very real. Do we just accrue karma in this lifetime and work through it? Or do we carry karma over from other times? I think the reason that a lot of people choose to come back into a human body again for another life is because they desire to work through some of their karma. I think they've chosen to come back just to work through that karma. So in that respect, yeah, they do carry karma over. It's still to be worked on. I mean, a soul is one entity. It doesn't matter how many lives it lives. It's accruing karma in every one of them. And I think that's why people come back, to work it out.
So what is their option? I mean, do you have the option to stay and work your karmic debt off? Or do you immediately go to being a spirit?
Well, some karma we put upon ourselves, our own guilt. So those kinds of karma can be worked out after we transition to what people would call heaven, or whatever word you want to use for it. So that kind of karma can be worked there. Other kind of karma has to be experienced, I think. This is not anything I've talked with them about in detail, but you come back in to work it out. Everybody thinks when you die that you see this movie of yourself, and that's your life review. That is not it. What you have to do is you have to experience every emotion you made another human being feel in that lifetime. Every emotion, any human. So that could be something like making your server feel bad because you said something ugly to her, to whatever ugly things you say to other people or do. And you don't have to say ugly things. Sometimes you have to feel the good and the bad emotions. So when you transition and you experience all these emotions that you've made other people feel, then you know what kind of karma you've put out and what you're getting back. And to me, that is kind of a hell. That would be a hell to feel what I exposed other people to emotionally. So that's what you're working out once you transition, and that's why people come back in to fix some things, if that makes any sense. That's a pretty big life review. And it makes me think about my words to people now.
Definitely, because you don't want to go to life review like in the red, so to speak. You definitely want to have more good than bad.
Do you also experience the good emotions?
Absolutely, all emotion.
Okay.
Fear, anger.
So it's not just
sorrow,
the negative.
Every emotion. And I can't imagine how overwhelming that would be.
So along that train of thought, do you believe in curses? And if so, like generational curses, or is that more so karma at play through like a line?
That's more karma at play through that same soul's lifetimes. But if you think, you today may have been your third grandmother back, then in that respect it would be karma coming through generations. But it's your own karma, it's no other soul's karma. A family line doesn't carry karma through it. Each soul carries its own karma. But you've been many of those people in that line. So in that respect, it could be karma forward, but it's not carried forward in generations. As for curses, curses work if somebody believes they work. Let me put it that simply. If someone believes they're cursed, it will work or can work. If somebody understands or believes they're not cursed, they're not. But people can put energetic patterns on you, and that's words. So, okay, words have power. Words have energy. Words are manifest. Words create realities, as do thoughts. So if you look at someone and say a pox on you, you've created something energetically there. If they receive that information, they'll probably get a pox or something. If they don't receive that information, then it's words that are out there, but you created it. It's still there. And because it is out there and it is still there around them, even though they don't receive it, it can be cleaned up regardless. So like you can go back, somebody can clean that curse because they can clean that energetic pattern that was left with that person. But if that person doesn't believe that it's a curse, it's not affected them. Does that make sense?
Yes, but then it's
all has
your
to
bad karma for putting it out there.
Yes, the person who put the curse out there has got some karma to answer to. But as energetic beings, we have energetic patterns around us, our aura. And so when somebody throws those words at us, they're floating around there. It's up to us whether we receive them or not. But it never hurts to keep your aura clean just to get rid of all that stuff that other people throw at you.
And how do you keep it clean? Like through the vibrations, like raising your vibrations and meditation and things like that?
That's one way. Yeah, that's one way. Meditate, clean your just visualize it. One good way for me is to envision God light or source light or universal light, whatever you want to call it, coming through the top of my head, out my hands, my feet, filling my aura up, and then dissipating into the ground. Another good way is to get in the shower and use some salt. Sea salt or sage cleaner. I've been using a sage wash that I love, sea salt and sage wash. And that will clean up your auric field. There are people who will clean up your auric field for you if you got some really bad gunk. But the easiest way is to do, and this is the way I do if I need to do it real fast, I visualize that white light coming through my head and then I blast it out into my auric field. You can clean a whole room, a whole building, a whole town up that way. Just bring it through and blast it out. I know that sounds strange, but if anybody tries it, they'll feel it and understand what I'm talking about.
I've done that before, and I also have a thing where because I feel like I take on emotions of people that I'm around, like I take, like it's almost like people dump on you sometimes. And when I get rid of that, like if after work or something like that, and I feel just like so bogged down, it's like kind of like your source light through the top of your head, but I breathe in white smoke.
Same thing.
And breathe out black smoke.
Yeah, same.
Like I feel like it's kind of like purifying inside my body, not just in my head or, that's how I clean.
That's why I like that white light coming through and through my whole body. I feel like it cleans the whole thing. But that's a good technique too. It's visualization with energy. It's an energy exercise. It's visualization with that energy, and when you visualize it, it exists.
So this, I guess, would be probably a good thing to do after investigations as well, just in case, there's something negative at these places and we don't want to bring it home with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely clean after an investigation. I generally would until the next day when I'm taking a shower or something, but absolutely things, there have been a lot of ghosts through a lot of time. We think of ghosts as somebody from the 1800s or the 1900s. No, you're dealing with people from 10th century, 8th century, 6th century. You're dealing with people who didn't think socially like we think now. So you're dealing with people who had mindsets from those times. So you can draw in some pretty negative things. I think sometimes what people call demons are actually a lesser thinking entity from a different time. I think there are very few things that I would actually call a demon. We get so wrapped up in our here and now that we forget that a lot of the things we encounter are from eons ago. So with that, they could feel denser or heavier and be meaner.
Yeah, that's very true, because they don't have the societal norms that we have now.
That could be why I experienced a lot of that too, like you said before, with my aura, but also I am a contradiction to probably some of their belief systems.
Exactly. All time is happening at all times, so you can speak or deal with things from not just that house, but from different times.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Bev. We really appreciate all of your time that you spent answering our questions. And I do know you do personal readings and you do reading parties and things like that. So if anyone out there, any of our listeners is interested in doing that, you can go to your website at www.beverlymcchesney.com and they will be able to book a reading there.
Right. You can do it all online. It's pretty simple. You can learn more about what I do, who I talk to, how it works, and just go to myname.com.
Sounds good. We will include a link in our episode description, so make sure to check it out there. As always, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you.